Welcome back to Macro Golf YouTube. So in today's video, I'm just going to talk you through 5 ways that I believe are the best ways for you to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of your self-massage. So the first thing I want to talk about is the tool that you're using. So I've just got a few different tools here. I want to talk about my least favourite first. So my least favourite is a foam roller that's really soft like this one. So you will see, hopefully you can see that from the camera, that this is just a smooth foam roller, really, really soft. And okay, it's got its place, but for most of the work that you're going to do in self-massage, it's just not going to provide enough stimulus into the joint, into the muscle, sorry. So for me, I just think these are quite often too soft. They've got a place for really tender tissue. Maybe if you're really tender on your quadriceps, or if you're working some outside on the IT band. But to be honest, for me, it's a little bit too soft. So I'll put this to a side for now, and I'll talk about kind of the tools that I use the most. So the first one is a foam roller like this. This is a really stiff foam roller. If any of you have got a foam roller from me, you'll realise they are really stiff. And they've also got texture. So I think they're two massive points of a good foam roller. Is one that is stiff. For me, I prefer a stiff one. I can always mediate my pressure off of that. And also one with texture, which I'll get onto why that's important in a minute. So if you can see that there, one that has got some texture on it, and it's also really stiff. So this is a great tool, and you'll be able to do the majority of your work with a tool like this. The next one I want to talk about is a massage ball. Now I've got 2 different types of massage ball here, and these are really great. You can kind of localize the work that you're trying to do. For example, if you're trying to work into the calf, you can really localize that work. But also they're great for working on the back. They're really good for also applying a lot of really sharp, deep pressure into one specific area. So I've got one smooth one here, which is relatively hard, and then I've got another one which is really hard, but it's got a real sticky feel into it, and you can also get in and tack a little bit, which I'll talk a little bit about when we talk about doing some movement through the self-massage. So they're the massage balls, they're really useful. The next thing I've got is a couple of peanut balls. Now these are great, especially if you're working on the back, onto the neck. I use these a lot on the legs as well. And these are obviously a lot harder than the foam roller here. Probably similar stiffness to this foam roller, but they just don't have the texture. So these are really useful to have, and you can do a lot of specific work on these. Really good for the forearm as well. And the final thing that I sometimes use is a kettlebell or a weight. And when we get into kind of the effectiveness of the massage we're doing, then I think it's really useful to use something that's got a lot of extra give as well, and something that can really apply some pressure. So tip number 1, think about the area that you're working on. If you're working on an area that's really resilient, like the calves or the hamstrings, you're going to need something a lot harder. Maybe a ball is going to be a lot better in that situation. If you're working on something that's a little bit more tender, then I'd go for the foam roller, or maybe in some occasions go for the soft roller. But think about the muscle that you're working on, think about the area you're working on, think how tender it is, and always go for a slightly harder version than you think you can manage. Okay, so now we've got the right tool, we now need to think a little bit about the way that we're moving into this. Now, very typical, let's take, for example, the calves as an example. And most basic instruction, and I instruct this as well, is from the calves, you would roll in the direction of the muscle, which for the calf would be up and down in this direction, which is great. Problem with that is you're going to struggle to apply enough pressure into that calf just rolling in that position. Even if I add a little bit of overstimulus, it's still not going to be quite enough to get the real work that we're looking for in this period. So something you can look at is actually the direction of the rolling that you're doing. So say for example you're going to do the calves, something I really like to do is called scrubbing. So from the calf in this position, I can apply a little bit of pressure, and I can actually just scrub the calf from left to right over the roller. Now what you're looking to do at this point is you're looking to get the skin and the tissue sliding over each other, and if you're struggling with that sliding of the tissue, then you're going to have some mobility issues. So you're looking here just about sliding back and forth, and I like to do this before I get into my deep massage and deep rolling, but you're just kind of waking up the tissue and using it. So think about the tool that you've got. So a foam roller with texture is perfect for this, and then you can just scrub back and forth, kind of lets the tissue know that you're coming for it, you're about to get in there, and then from there if you want to get a little bit of deeper work in, you can. And on that point, sticking with tip number 2, what you can start to do is apply a little bit of pressure, and if you find a spot, you can push down with that spot. Kelly Starrett talks a lot about this, about tacking and flossing, and then from there, I can actually just move this foot backwards and forwards if I find that spot. So we're not necessarily just thinking about rolling up and down all of the time. If you find a spot that's sore, stick on, take some breaths, you can apply some extra breath if you want to, and now we're talking about mobility with movement in there. Work exactly the same with the quads and the hamstrings as well. Say for example you find a spot, then you can work the knee up and down in that movement while holding that spot. So it's a little bit of mobility and movement, which is a great way to kind of super speed your self-massage work. So that was kind of tip 2 and tip 3 in one there. We're talking about direction and we're also talking about mobility and movement. So that's how you're using that tool that you've chosen. Now we're going to move on to tip number 4, which I think is actually probably the most important one. And now we're talking about breathing. So breathing is such an important part of the mobility and self-massage work that you do. If you can really own a position, then you're going to become more comfortable using that position. So say for example, I'm going to be self-massaging my calves and I'm going through some movement or I'm in a really deep stretch and I'm adding some extra pressure and massage. If I can't take a deep breath in and out on that position, then I don't own that position and I've gone too far. So it's really important that as you're going through your self-massage and as you're going through your mobility work, that you maintain the ability to take a full deep breath at all times. If you can take a full deep breath in that position, you own that position and you're going to be much more likely to be able to use that position when you're out getting your performance. And the final point is the ability to test and retest the work that you're doing. All of this work will be pointless if you don't notice a benefit of doing it. And the great thing with mobility work and self-massage work is you should notice a difference immediately after getting that work done. So say for example, again, if I was going to work on my calves, I might want to come into a dorsiflexion test on my calves, do some self-massage, and then retest myself. And I know that if I've seen a difference after doing that bit of work, then the work that I've done has been worthwhile. If I don't see a difference in that, I either didn't spend enough time there or what I was doing wasn't effective enough. So it's always really useful to test and retest to make sure that the work that we're doing is having a meaningful effect. So there are 5 top tips for self-massage. The first one is make sure you've got the right tool. The second one is don't always think about moving in the same direction up and down all the time. Look to move side to side, and then also add number 3, which is look to add some movement into that self-massage as well. Number 4, you need to be looking at breathing. If you can't take a full deep breath in that position, remember you don't own that position, so make sure you can take a full deep breath as you're going through all your self-massage and mobility work. And the last one, probably really important, is to test and retest. Make sure the work that you're doing is worthwhile and you're seeing the benefit from that immediately.